Hi, I'm out of video ideas that won't take an entire month to make, so I'm just gonna be lazy and do what actually performs decently on my channel. And by that, I mean I'm gonna play video game and talk about it, because I'm just that unique. I've never played any of the Psychonauts games, but they always look like an experience from an outside perspective. As someone who knows nothing about them, they always kind of look like they tried to make Ratchet and Clank, well, on LSD and living in a swamp, so this is probably gonna be my kind of game. So without further ado, I'm already tired of making this intro sequence, so I'm just gonna speed through the first Psychonauts game in about 3 days, not because I'm on like a tight time schedule to upload this video, but because I only have so long before I lose access to Xbox Game Pass, because I don't have enough money in my account to renew my subscription, so, cut. Okay, so Psychonauts was not what I expected. I don't know how I could explain what I thought this game would be, but it wasn't whatever I just played, and I'm so happy for that reason, because it was so much better than I expected. Psychonauts is one of those pieces of media that you'll hear a little bit about over the years, so it's like, okay, yeah, it's probably a pretty good game then if it's got this little niche following to it, but then you dive in yourself one day and it's like, oh my god, why haven't more people talked about this? There's so much to talk about, and I don't even know where to start, because the amount of detail and depth in this game is unmatched by even a lot of modern day video games, and it isn't even close. The kind of person that would have the brain to create a concept for a world like that of the world of Psychonauts is the kind of person that you would be honored to shake their hand, but terrified to actually know them, because they're definitely batshit fucking insane. A basic synopsis of Psychonauts. The story is set in a world where there are a select few people who are born with a psychic gene, allowing them to learn abilities such as astral projection, psi-blast, telekinesis, pyrokinesis, levitation, clairvoyance, which is a fun one. You also have invisibility, mind reading. I've only read like half of these so far, but I think you get the point. And those born with the psychic gene are able to become Psychonauts, which are basically just like psychic agents. You play as Rasputin, a young psychic boy who snuck away from his family in the circus to go learn how to master his abilities at the Psychonauts training camp. After convincing the counselors to let him stay, he begins his training with the other cadets, and because the psychics have the ability to astral project, the way the camp counselors train them is by having the kids project into their minds. This is by far the best part about this game, the levels, because each new level is just you entering a different person's brain. The tutorial level is in the brain of Coach Oleander, who is a war-obsessed man who never got into the military because of his height. So you run around a mock battlefield getting shot at by cardboard cutout soldiers. As you're traversing through the levels, you can find a couple of collectibles that are honestly just brilliant. There's giant suitcases and bags with faces on them that constantly cry until you unite them with a special tag, and the game's like, oh yeah, that's just emotional baggage. You can find and clean up cobwebs in secluded areas, and there's safes you can crack open with a lot of deep personal information about the person's mind you're currently in that you would never learn normally through just a basic story. It was honestly so cool learning so much about a character without having the game spoon-feed it directly to you. Like, I personally didn't realize Coach Oleander didn't actually make the military until I found the safe documenting his shame. And the chaotic nature of some of these levels serve as a form of commentary on mental health as well. You can see this quite easily when comparing the minds of Mio Vodello and Sasha 9. Mio Vodello is a sane person with a good mental health, and she is also a very expressive person with a love for the 70s disco aesthetic. She doesn't try to shackle her emotions at all, but instead embraces them. So it makes sense that the inside of her mind is an extremely expansive, colorful, fun party. Compare this to Sasha 9. He is also a sane person, but in his own regard. Where Mia lets all of her emotions run rampant and accepts them, Sasha keeps his in temper. He's also a scientist with a cold exterior and a monotone way of speaking, which makes him come off as a bit bland and uninteresting at first. This is one reason why when you first enter his mind, there's nothing there except one cube Sasha has full control over. But this is where the game teaches you a lesson in the fragility of a mental health when bottling everything up like that, because after a failed training exercise with Raz, he loses complete control over his psyche, and elements of his life and past come pouring out in one big flaming mess. And this is when you start to find things like his emotional baggage in his safes, containing secrets of the family he's lost. Each level just has so many layers to it, from the layout to the design to the music used. I was just floored by each new level I encountered. A little bit into the game is when the main conflict of the story comes into play, which I somehow partially predicted. As I was going through these levels, I was recording the gameplay, and also I had my mic on, just in case if I had something worth jotting down, I could say it into the microphone instead of having to write it. And partially through the first level, I said this. I hope I get to go into some old dude's brain, and it's like all fuzzy like TV static in there, and he's just like, "Don't mind all that, Sonny. Lobotomies were legal back in my day." And I was completely unaware that lobotomies were gonna be such a huge plot point in this game. Long story short, Coach Oleander hired Dr. Loboto, get it? It's like lobotomy, to steal the brains of the psychic children one by one and make them into weapons. And after having a vision in his dream of this happening, Raz sets out to foil this evil plan, and that's what the rest of the game is about. And that's also when the game starts to get fucking whack. Because instead of diving into the minds of responsible, mentally healthy teachers, you dive into the brain of a fish monster, where at first you think you're gonna be a little dude in a big city, but then it is revealed that you were actually a giant-sized guy in a big city. And after that level, the fish monster takes you to go stop Dr. Loboto, who is holed up in an insane asylum. This is just all around a really funny situation to be in, because the last brain you would want a 10-year-old psychic to prod around in is that of an institutionalized psychiatric patient. But you go into the minds of 4 of them, so... And these next batch of levels are phenomenal, and there's always so much more to them than meets the eye. I was feeling quite tired one night, and so I was really not up for another long level, and much to my delight, the next brain I went into was just a small room. I'd gone into the mind of a man with what this guy says is dissociative identity disorder. Fred Bonaparte is the descendant of Napoleon Bonaparte, and so in his mind he's stuck playing a board game against his ancestor but can never win. The objective is to help Fred finally win a game, and seeing that I was only in a small room, I thought to myself, this should be quick and simple, right? But then I jumped on the board and shrunk down to the size of a piece, and then I walked up to a house and shrunk down small enough to enter. This level took an hour. These levels had layers upon layers upon layers, and it was all so good. My favorite level of the entire game was easily, without a shadow of a doubt, the Milkman arc. This level is not for the faint of heart. The Milkman level is easily enough to send a person insane trying to find out the mystery of him. The story starts at the asylum gates, where you meet the institution's guard, Boyd Cooper, and right away you can tell he's not right, scribbling writings of a madman all over the walls and uttering nonsense about the one they call the Milkman. And so, seeking answers as to the identity of this Milkman of legend, Raz enters Boyd's mind, where this rabbit hole gets deeper. You find yourself in the mind-bending shambles of a suburban neighborhood, home to only Girl Scouts in shadowy figures and trench coats. You ask one of the small children what they can tell you about the Milkman, and they treat the subject like some sort of taboo. And you make one wrong move and the shadowy figures pluck you from out of the streets and interrogate you, asking, "Who is the Milkman?" But you don't know anything about the Milkman! And 2 times during your investigation of this town, you are pulled out of nowhere into hell, where you fight a demon, with literally no explanation as to why. But this just leads to more questions. Why can't people talk about him? Why are the trench coats after him? Where is he? What are his connections to hell and by proxy Satan? Why milk? What happened to this town? Who the fuck is this Milkman? And after finding evidence leading to an address, trekking through a parking lot of assassins disguised as one of them, and a suicide bomber cover-up job, you find where the Milkman is hiding, and yeah, it was Boyd Cooper the entire time. He's got like split personalities or something. But then the trenchcoat motherfuckers pull up, and he's all, I'm the Milkman. My milk is delicious. Special delivery today. The conclusion to the Milkman storyline is Boyd being released from his Winter Soldier state after completing his final delivery, which in fact meant blowing up the asylum! I feel as if I've already shown you so much of the insanity of Psychonauts, but the thing is, there's so much more. I haven't even touched on Rasputin's character development, and he's got a very interesting story. It masterfully tackles subjects like mental health in a very unique way, because you physically travel through Raz's brain and find problems like, why does the inside of his brain have a huge hostile monster and a bunch of meat everywhere? And so even as the player, you quickly become curious as to what is wrong with him. It's crazy how, on a surface level, Psychonauts has a very basic story. It runs the cliche of young prodigy saves the world from evil scheme, but the game has another layer of brilliance only visible once you look closer at all of the smaller stories that you would normally never see, because they're all in the brains of the people around you. This has somehow been one of my more normal feeling video essays, and I have no idea how that happened in a video about a game so crazy. I know I just spoiled it all, but go play it anyways if you want a great experience. There's also a second game, so you could play that too. Anyways, yeah, see you around, unless I don't. Goodbye.